The huge space station called Nexus hung in the dark between stars like a metal city. Ships from 100 different worlds came here to trade and talk. The station had many levels, each one bigger than most planets' biggest cities. Lights from thousands of windows made it look like a glowing jewel in space. Jinwoo pressed his face against the small window of his transport ship. He had never seen anything so big. The young man was a scientist who studied how different people lived and died. He came from Earth to learn about alien funeral customs. His dark hair was messy from the long trip and his clothes were wrinkled. But his eyes were bright with excitement. "First time seeing Nexus?" asked the pilot, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. "Yes," Jinwoo said. "It's amazing." The ship moved slowly toward the docking bay. Other ships flew around them like metal fish in a huge ocean. Some were tiny one-person craft. Others were massive cargo ships as big as mountains. Inside the station, Jinwoo walked through the main corridor. The ceiling was so high he could not see the top. Aliens of every shape and size walked past him. Some had fur, some had scales. Some looked like walking plants. The air smelled of strange spices and engine fuel. He found the human embassy on level 47. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, everything looked normal and Earth-like. Jinwoo felt his shoulders relax. After weeks in space, seeing familiar things felt good. "You must be Jinwoo," said a woman's voice. He turned to see a tall woman with short black hair and kind eyes. She wore a clean blue uniform with Earth's symbol on it. "I'm Nari," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm the diplomat here." "Welcome to Nexus." "Thank you," Jinwoo said. "This place is incredible." "Wait until you meet all the different species," Nari said with a smile. "Come, let me show you to your room. Then we can talk about your research." As they walked through the embassy halls, Nari pointed out different areas. "That's the meeting room where we talk with alien governments. Over there is the medical bay. And this," she opened a door, "is where you'll stay." The room was small but comfortable. It had a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out into space. Jinwoo put down his bags and sat on the bed. "There's someone else you should meet," Nari said. "His name is Minho. He helps humans who are sad about losing people they love. He works with people who live far from Earth and can't go home when someone dies." "That sounds helpful," Jinwoo said. "I'd like to meet him." Nari led him to another part of the embassy. In a quiet room with soft chairs and warm lights, they found Minho. He was a gentle-looking man with gray hair and calm eyes. He was talking quietly with a young woman who looked very sad. When they finished talking, the woman left and Minho came over to them. "This is Jinwoo," Nari said. "The scientist I told you about." "Ah yes," Minho said, shaking Jinwoo's hand. "The one studying death customs. Your work is very important. Death is hard for everyone. But it's even harder when you're far from home." They sat down together. Minho made tea while they talked. "I've been studying how different cultures say goodbye to their dead," Jinwoo explained. "Each group has special ways to honor people who die. Some bury them, some burn them, some send them into space. But they all have ways to help the living feel better." "Humans are good at dealing with death," Minho said. "We've had to be. We don't live very long compared to some aliens here, but maybe that's why we understand it better." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. Nari looked at her communication device. "Strange," she said. "The Vorthak want to meet with us. They never ask for meetings." "Who are the Vorthak?" Jinwoo asked. Nari and Minho looked at each other with worried faces. "They're one of the oldest species in the galaxy," Nari explained. "They've been alive for thousands and thousands of years. But they're not really alive, not like us. They're undead." "Undead?" Jinwoo felt confused. "They died long ago, but they didn't stay dead," Minho said. "When their bodies are destroyed, they just come back somewhere else. They remember everything from before. They can't really die." "That sounds amazing," Jinwoo said. "Maybe," Nari said. "But they've never been interested in talking with other species before. They keep to themselves. If they want to meet us now, something important must be happening." The meeting was set for the next day. Jinwoo spent the night reading about the Vorthak. What he learned made him feel uneasy. They were ancient beings who looked like skeletons made of white bone and glowing energy. They had no flesh, no blood, no beating hearts. They had been dead for so long that no one remembered what they looked like when they were alive. The next morning, Jinwoo, Nari, and Minho went to the main meeting hall. It was a huge room with a dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center was a long table where different species could sit and talk. When the Vorthak arrived, Jinwoo felt his breath catch. There were 3 of them, floating a few inches above the ground. They looked exactly like human skeletons, but bigger, and made of something that glowed softly white. Where their eyes should be, blue flames flickered. They wore long robes that moved even though there was no wind. The leader spoke in a voice like wind through empty caves. I am Kethmore. I speak for the Vorthak people. Welcome, Nari said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm Nari, representing Earth. How can we help you? Kethmore was quiet for a long moment. The flames in his eye sockets grew brighter. We are dying, he said finally. The humans looked at each other, confused. But you can't die, Nari said carefully. That's what makes you Vorthak. You come back when your bodies are destroyed. No longer, Kethmore said. His voice carried deep sadness that made the room feel cold. Our people fight the Helix swarm. When they destroy us now, we do not return. We simply stop. Gone forever. Jinwoo leaned forward. How many of your people have you lost? Hundreds, Kethmore said. And we do not understand. For millions of years, death meant nothing to us. We would fall, we would rise again. Now our people vanish and we wait for them to return, but they do not come. The undead being's voice cracked like breaking ice. We do not know what to do. We do not know how to accept that they will not return. Our people wait in their homes for the lost ones. They do not eat, they do not work, they do not speak. They just wait. Minho understood first. You've never learned how to grieve, he said softly. Grieve? Kethmore repeated the word like it was foreign. It's what living beings do when someone they love dies, Minho explained. It's how we learn to accept that they won't come back. It's how we learn to keep living without them. Kethmore stared at them with his burning eyes. Teach us, he said. We have existed for eons, but we know nothing of death. We know nothing of saying goodbye. Our people are broken and we do not know how to heal. Jinwoo felt his heart beat faster. This was why he had come to Nexus. Not just to study death customs, but to help people understand them. We'll help you, he said. But first you need to tell us everything about what's happening to your people. 3 days later, a new ship arrived at Nexus Station. Dr. Soman stepped out of the transport looking tired but eager. She had traveled from a research station near Jupiter when she got Nari's message. Soman was a mind doctor who helped people understand their feelings and thoughts. Thank you for coming so quickly, Nari said as they met in the docking bay. The situation with the Vorthak is getting worse. Soman adjusted her glasses and picked up her medical bag. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. Tell me what's happening. As they walked through the station corridors, Nari explained. More Vorthak have died permanently in the last few days. The ones who are left are acting very strange. Some won't leave their rooms. Others keep going to places where their dead friends used to be, waiting for them. They found Jinwoo and Minho in the embassy's meeting room. Jinwoo was reading through stacks of papers and books about the Vorthak. Minho was preparing tea, something he did when he was worried. Dr. Soman, Jinwoo said, standing up to greet her. I'm glad you're here. I've been studying Vorthak culture and I think I understand part of the problem. What did you find? Soman asked, sitting down and accepting a cup of tea from Minho. The Vorthak have never developed any concepts about permanent loss, Jinwoo explained. In their language, there's no word for goodbye. There's no word for missing someone. They have words for temporarily apart, or we'll meet again soon, but nothing for permanent separation. Soman nodded slowly. That makes sense. If death was never permanent for them, they would never need those concepts. It's worse than that, Minho added. They don't just lack the words. They don't have the mental tools to process permanent loss. It's like asking someone who was born blind to understand the color blue. Before anyone could respond, Kethmore appeared in the doorway. The Vorthak leader moved like smoke, making no sound. The blue flames in his skull flickered weakly. Forgive me, he said. I did not mean to listen, but I heard my people's name. Please come in, Soman said kindly. I'm Dr. Somin. I study minds and feelings. I want to help your people. Kethmore floated into the room and settled near the table. More of my people have stopped moving, he said. They sit in their quarters and stare at nothing. They do not respond when others speak to them. Can you take me to see them? Soman asked. I might be able to help. Kethmore agreed, and soon they were all walking through a different part of the station. The Vorthak lived in a section that was kept very cold and dark. The walls were made of black metal and strange blue lights provided the only illumination. They stopped at a door that slid open silently. Inside, another Vorthak sat perfectly still on a simple chair. This one was smaller than Kethmore, and the glow from its bones was very dim. "This is Yeltar," Kethmore said sadly. "Her bondmate was destroyed by the Helix swarm 5 days ago. She has not moved or spoken since." Soman approached slowly. "Hello, Yeltar." "My name is Soman. I'm a friend." Yeltar did not respond. Her skull turned toward Soman, but the flame eyes showed no recognition. "Can you tell me about her bondmate?" Soman asked Kethmore quietly. "Morthek was her companion for 3,000 years, Kethmore explained. They did everything together. When one was destroyed in battle, the other would wait until they reformed and they would continue as before. Yeltar is waiting for Morthek to return." Soman sat down across from Yeltar. "How long will she wait?" she asked. "Forever," Kethmore said simply. "Time means nothing to us. We have forever." "But Morthek isn't coming back," Soman said gently. The flames in Kethmore's eyes grew brighter with what looked like pain. "We know this in our minds, but we do not know it in our, what do you call it? Our hearts? We do not understand how to stop waiting." They visited several more Vorthak quarters. The situation was the same everywhere. Vorthak sitting still, waiting for friends and loved ones who would never return. Some had been sitting without moving for weeks. Back in the human embassy, the group gathered to discuss what they had seen. "It's like they're all frozen in the first stage of grief," Soman explained. "When humans lose someone, we go through different feelings. First, shock and denial, refusing to believe the person is really gone. Then anger, sadness, and finally acceptance. But the Vorthak are stuck in denial. How do we help them move past it?" Nari asked. "We need to understand more about their psychology," Soman said. "Kethmore, can you tell me about your own experiences? Have you lost someone permanently?" Kethmore was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. "Yes, my bondmate, Sylvana. She was destroyed 3 weeks ago. How do you feel about that?" Soman asked gently. "I do not know," Kethmore said. "There is something inside me that feels wrong. Like a part of me is missing. But I do not understand what it means." "That's grief," Minho said. "That missing feeling is grief." "Among humans, grief is how we learn to live with loss," Jinwoo added. "It's painful, but it helps us heal." Suddenly, an alarm started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Nari quickly checked her communication device. "Emergency meeting in the command center," she said. "All species representatives." They hurried to the command center, a large room full of screens and control panels. Representatives from dozens of alien species were gathered there. At the front of the room, Station Commander Hyok was pointing at a large display showing space around the station. "The Helix swarm is moving toward our sector," he announced. "Long-range sensors show a fleet of their ships heading this way. They'll reach us in 4 days." Worried voices filled the room. The Helix swarm was known throughout the galaxy as destroyers. They attacked anything that wasn't part of their hive mind. "What are their numbers?" asked a tall insect-like alien. "At least 200 ships," Hyok replied. "Maybe more." Kethmore floated forward. "They have the weapons that kill us permanently," he said. "We cannot fight them as we used to. Before we would attack without fear because we knew we would return if destroyed. Now you're afraid," Somin said, understanding. "Yes," Kethmore admitted. For the first time in millions of years, the Vorthak know fear. The meeting continued for hours as different species discussed defense plans. But Jinwoo noticed that Kethmore seemed distracted. The Vorthak leader kept looking at the star display, lost in thought. Later that night, Jinwoo found Kethmore on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" Jinwoo asked. "I am thinking about Sylvana," Kethmore said. "Before she was destroyed, she told me something. She said she was not afraid to die because she had lived a good life with me. At the time, I did not understand. How can one not be afraid of ending?" "Maybe," Jinwoo said carefully. "She wasn't afraid because she knew she would live on in your memories of her." Kethmore turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "When humans die, their bodies stop working. But the people who love them keep their memories alive. They tell stories about them. They remember the good times. In that way, the dead person continues to exist. But they are still gone," Kethmore said. "Yes," Jinwoo agreed. "But they're also still with us in a different way." Kethmore considered this. "This is very strange to me, but I think I would like to learn more about this." Can you teach me to remember Sylvana in the way humans remember their dead? Yes, Jinwoo said. But first you need to understand that it will hurt. Remembering someone who is gone always hurts at first. I already hurt, Kethmore said quietly. Perhaps learning will help the hurt make sense. As they stood together looking at the stars, Jinwoo realized that they were about to attempt something that had never been tried before. They were going to teach immortal beings how to be mortal, not in body but in spirit. They were going to teach the undead how to grieve, how to heal, and most importantly, how to say goodbye. The question was, would they have enough time before the Helix swarm arrived? The next morning brought a new ship to Nexus Station. Yunbi stepped off the transport carrying a large bag full of art supplies and books. She was a young woman with paint-stained fingers and bright, creative eyes. Her job was making beautiful things, paintings, poems, and sculptures that helped people understand their feelings. I came as soon as I could, Yunbi said when she met the others in the embassy. Nari's message said you needed someone who understands how art helps with grief. Thank you for coming, Jinwoo said. We're trying to teach the Vorthak about human ways of dealing with death. But it's very difficult. They don't understand our emotions. Yunbi set down her bag and pulled out a small painting. It showed an old man sitting by a window looking at a garden. I painted this after my grandfather died, she said. He loved to garden. When I look at this painting, I remember him working with his flowers. It makes me sad but also happy. Kethmore appeared in the doorway, moving silently as always. He looked at the painting with his flame eyes. The old human is gone? He asked. Yes, Yunbi said. He died 2 years ago. But you made this image of him. Why? So I won't forget him, Yunbi explained. And so others can learn about him too. Art helps us keep our loved ones alive in our hearts. Kethmore floated closer to the painting. This is similar to what Jinwoo told me about memory. But I do not understand why you would want to remember if it makes you sad. Because the sadness isn't the only feeling, Yunbi said. Yes, I'm sad that he's gone. But I'm also happy that I had time with him. I'm grateful for what he taught me. The sadness and happiness live together. Over the next few hours, more humans arrived to help with the project. Doyun came from the history department on Mars. He was an older man who knew all about how different human cultures had dealt with death over thousands of years. Young-ho arrived from the military station near Saturn. He was a strong, serious man who understood battle and loss. They all gathered in the large meeting room to discuss their plan. We need to be systematic about this, Soman said. The Vorthak don't just lack understanding about death. They lack the emotional framework to process any kind of permanent loss. Right, Doyun agreed. Let me share what I know about human death customs. Every culture on Earth developed ways to honor the dead and help the living cope with loss. He opened his datapad and showed images on the wall screen. Ancient Egyptians preserved bodies and buried them with things they would need in the afterlife. Greeks held funeral games to honor dead heroes. Some cultures bury their dead, some burn them, some leave them for nature. Kethmore studied the images, these customs. They all involve the body of the dead person? Often, yes, Do-hyun said. But that's not the most important part. The important part is that these ceremonies help the living say goodbye. They give people a way to honor the dead and then continue with life. But we Vorthak have no bodies to honor, Kethmore said. When we are destroyed, nothing remains. Then we'll help you create new customs, Yunbi said. Ways to honor your dead that work for your people. Minho leaned forward. But first, Kethmore, you need to understand the stages of grief. When humans lose someone, we go through different feelings. First, we refuse to believe it's real. Then we get angry. Then we feel very sad. Then we make bargains. We try to think of ways to bring the person back. Finally, we accept that they're gone. These are the feelings I have been having, Kethmore said slowly. First, I kept expecting Sylvana to return. Then I became angry at the Helix swarm. Now I feel empty inside. That's normal, Soman said kindly. You're learning to grieve. It's painful, but it's also healing. Young-ho had been quiet, but now he spoke up. We have 3 days before the Helix swarm arrives. If we're going to teach the Vorthak about grief, we need to do it quickly. And we need to help them understand that they can still fight bravely, even if they might die permanently. How do humans find courage when they know they might die? Kethmore asked. Because we know our lives have meaning, Jinwoo said. We know that even if we die, the things we do matter. The people we love, the ideas we share, the good we do. These things continue after we're gone. That afternoon, they began working with individual Vorthak. Hyunbi sat with Yeltar, the Vorthak who had not moved since losing her bondmate. "Tell me about Mortek," Hyunbi said gently. For a long time, Yeltar did not respond. Then slowly she began to speak. "Mortek was kind," she said in a voice like whispers. When other Vorthak were harsh or angry, Mortek was gentle. He liked to study the patterns of stars. He would spend hours watching how they moved. "That sounds beautiful," Hyunbi said. She began to draw while Yeltar talked. What else did he like to do? As Yeltar talked about Mortek, Hyunbi drew pictures of the things she described. She drew a Vorthak figure looking at stars. She drew two Vorthak walking together through space. "Would you like to keep these drawings?" Hyunbi asked when she was finished. Yeltar looked at the pictures with her flame eyes. For the first time in weeks, she moved. She reached out and touched one of the drawings. This is how I remember him," she said. "But he is still gone." "Yes," Hyunbi said. "But now you have a way to remember him, and you can share these memories with others. That way they'll know about Morthek too." Meanwhile, Do-hyun was working with a group of Vorthak warriors. He was teaching them about human military traditions for honoring fallen soldiers. "We have ceremonies called memorial services," he explained. "We gather together and share stories about the people who died fighting. We promise to remember their courage. But what is the purpose?" asked one of the warriors. "They are gone. They cannot hear our words. The purpose is for the living," Do-hyun said. "It helps us remember why we fight. It reminds us that our fallen friends died for something important, and it helps us find the strength to keep fighting." In another room, Minho was working with Kethmore on understanding his own grief. "Tell me about the last time you saw Sylvana," Minho said. Kethmore was quiet for a moment. "We were preparing for battle against the Helix swarm. She told me she was not afraid to die because she had lived a good life. I thought she was being foolish now. Now I think she understood something I did not." "What do you think she understood?" "That life has value not because it lasts forever, but because it is limited," Kethmore said slowly. "If we have forever, then nothing we do is urgent. Nothing is precious. But if our time is short, then every moment matters." "That's a very wise understanding," Minho said. "Humans have always known this. Maybe that's why we've learned to say goodbye, because we know that time together is limited and precious." As the day went on, something amazing began to happen. The Vorthak who had been sitting motionless for weeks began to move again. They started talking to each other. They began to share memories of their lost friends. Yeltar left her room for the first time since Morthek's death. She found other Vorthak who had known him and showed them Yunbi's drawings. Together they began to tell stories about him. But the most important change was in Kethmore. That evening he came to find the human team. "I want to create a ceremony," he said, "a way for the Vorthak to honor our permanently dead, but I do not know how." "We can help you design it," Jinwoo said. "It should be something that fits your culture," Yunbi added. "What things are important to the Vorthak?" Kethmore thought for a moment. "We value memory. We value the sharing of experience. We value the continuation of knowledge." "Then let's create a ceremony based on those things," Soman suggested. They worked together late into the night. By morning, they had designed the first Vorthak funeral ritual. They called it the Memory Echo Ceremony. In this ceremony, all the Vorthak who knew the dead person would gather in a circle. Each one would share a memory of the person who died. They would talk about what that person taught them, what they learned from them, what they would remember most. But the most important part came at the end. Together, all the Vorthak would promise to carry those memories forward. They would promise to share them with others. In this way, the dead person would continue to exist in the memories and actions of the living. "It's beautiful," Yunbi said when they explained the ceremony to her. "It's more than beautiful," Minho said. "It's healing." Kethmore looked at his new human friends. "You have given us something precious," he said. "You have taught us that death does not have to be an ending. It can also be a beginning, the beginning of memory, the beginning of honor, the beginning of carrying our loved ones with us in a new way." But even as they celebrated this breakthrough, they all knew that time was running out. The Helix swarm would arrive tomorrow. Soon the Vorthak would have to put their new understanding of death and courage to the test. The question was, would knowing how to grieve also teach them how to live, and how to fight for what mattered, even in the face of permanent death? The alarms started early in the morning. Red lights flashed through every corridor of Nexus Station as the warning signals echoed off the metal walls. The Helix swarm had arrived ahead of schedule. Wusung ran through the station's command center, checking displays and giving orders to his defense teams. He was the human military commander for this sector, a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought the Helix swarm before and knew how dangerous they were. "How many ships?" he called out to his officers. 300 and counting, replied Lieutenant Isul from her position at the sensor station. She was young, barely 20, but she was the best scanner operator they had. "They're moving in an attack formation." Wusung looked at the main screen showing space around the station. The Helix swarm ships looked like giant metal insects with too many legs. They moved together like a real swarm, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others. "Send word to all species representatives," Wusung ordered. "Emergency defense meeting in 10 minutes. Across the station, humans and aliens prepared for battle. In the Vorthak section, Kethmore floated through the dark corridors speaking to his people. "The enemy comes," he told them. "Many of us will die permanently today. But we have learned from the humans that death is not meaningless if we die for something important." The Vorthak warriors gathered around their leader. There were 50 of them, all glowing with the pale light of undead energy. Before learning about grief from the humans, they would have rushed into battle without fear, knowing they would return if destroyed. Now they understood that this battle might be their last. "Are you afraid?" asked Yeltar. She had become one of Kethmore's advisors after learning to cope with Morthek's death. "Yes," Kethmore said honestly, "but the humans have taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what is right even when you are afraid." In the human embassy, Jinwu, Nari, Somin, and the others were preparing to help with the defense. Even though they were not soldiers, they knew their knowledge of Vorthak psychology might be needed. "The Vorthak have never fought a battle where they could die permanently," Somin said as she packed medical supplies. "We need to be ready to help them if they start to panic." "They won't panic," Minho said quietly. "They've learned too much about courage in the last few days." The defense meeting was held in the main conference room. Representatives from dozens of species sat around the large table while Wusung explained the situation. "The Helix swarm has brought more ships than we expected," he said. "Our defense fleet has only 80 ships. We're outnumbered almost 4-1. A worried murmur went through the room. The insect-like Kelhari representative clicked his mandibles nervously. The plant-based Verdani rustled their leaves in distress. "What about evacuation?" asked the Kelhari. "Not enough time," Wusung replied. "They'll be in weapon range in 2 hours. We have to fight." Kethmore floated forward. "The Vorthak will fight," he said. "We have learned about mortality from the humans. We are no longer afraid to risk permanent death for a worthy cause." "Are you sure?" asked the Verdani representative. "Your people have never faced real death before." "That is exactly why we must face it now," Kethmore said. "The humans have taught us that life only has meaning when it can end. We choose to make our lives meaningful." The battle began an hour later. Nexus Station's defense fleet moved out to meet the Helix swarm in the space between planets. Human ships flew alongside Vorthak vessels, alien fighters next to massive battleships. Jinwu and the other non-military humans watched from the station's observation deck. Through the thick, transparent metal, they could see the tiny lights of the battle in the distance. "I hope we taught them enough," Jinwu said quietly. "We taught them the most important thing," Minho replied. "We taught them that death doesn't make life meaningless. It makes life precious." The battle was fierce. Helix swarm ships fired weapons that could destroy the Vorthak permanently, beams of energy that targeted their essence cores and prevented them from reforming. But the Vorthak fought differently than they ever had before. Instead of attacking recklessly, they fought with careful strategy. They protected each other. They took risks only when those risks might save others. Kethmore commanded a group of Vorthak fighters from his own ship. When he saw a human vessel surrounded by enemy ships, he made a choice that the old Kethmore would never have made. "Follow me," he told his warriors. "We're going to save those humans even if it costs us our lives. But we might die permanently." One of his fighters protested. "Yes," Kethmore said. "And that makes our choice to help them even more important." The Vorthak ships dove into the enemy formation. 3 of them were destroyed permanently by Helix weapons. Their essence cores shattered forever, but they managed to rescue the human ship. Back on the station, terrible news began to arrive. Mirai, A human medical officer had taken a small ship to rescue survivors from a damaged vessel. Her ship had been caught by Helix fighters. "Her ship is badly damaged," reported Isul from the sensor station. "Life support is failing. Can we reach her?" Wusung asked. "The Helix ships are blocking all rescue attempts," came the reply. Suddenly, Kethmore's voice came over the communication system. "I can reach her. My ship can phase through their blockade." "It's too dangerous," Wusung said. "They'll target you with their permanent death weapons." "Then I will die," Kethmore said simply. "But if I do nothing, she will die anyway. The humans taught me that some things are worth dying for." Kethmore's ship moved through space like a ghost, using Vorthak technology to become partly invisible. He reached Mireille's damaged vessel and brought her aboard his ship. But as they tried to escape, 3 Helix ships surrounded them. Their weapons charged up, ready to fire the beams that would destroy Kethmore's essence core forever. In those final moments, Kethmore felt something he had never experienced in millions of years of existence: perfect clarity about what mattered. "Mireille," he said to the injured human woman, "tell your people that the Vorthak learned the meaning of life from you. Tell them we learned that death is not the enemy. Meaninglessness is the enemy." The Helix weapons fired. Kethmore's ship was destroyed and his essence core was shattered. For the first time in eons, the ancient being experienced true death. But in those last seconds, he did something remarkable. Using all his remaining energy, he managed to launch Mireille's escape pod toward the station. She would live. As Mireille's pod drifted toward safety, she could hear Kethmore's final words over the communication system. "Thank you for teaching us how to say goodbye." The battle continued for hours. More Vorthak died permanently, but they fought with a courage and determination they had never shown before. They protected civilians, rescued wounded enemies, and sacrificed themselves for others. Finally, the combined fleet managed to drive off the Helix swarm. The enemy retreated into deep space. Their attack failed, but the cost had been enormous. 20 Vorthak had died permanently, including their leader Kethmore. Many humans and other aliens had also lost their lives. As the survivors gathered in the station's main assembly hall, Yeltar stepped forward to speak for the remaining Vorthak. "Today, many of our people experienced true death for the first time," she said. "But they did not die in vain. They died protecting others. They died for something greater than themselves." She looked at the humans in the crowd. "Before we met you, we existed, but we did not truly live. We thought eternal life made us strong, but it made us weak. We had no reason to be brave because we had nothing to lose. Now we understand," she continued. "Life is not precious because it lasts forever. Life is precious because it ends. Every moment matters because we have only a limited number of moments. Every choice has weight because it might be our last choice." Jinwoo felt tears in his eyes as he listened. The Vorthak had learned the most important human lesson of all, that mortality was not a weakness but a strength. "We want to honor our dead," Yeltar said. "Will you help us perform the memory echo ceremony for Kethmore and the others?" "Of course," Somin said. That evening in the great assembly hall, humans and Vorthak gathered together for the first funeral ceremony in Vorthak history. One by one, they shared memories of Kethmore and the other fallen warriors. Mireille, still weak from her injuries, spoke about Kethmore's final sacrifice. "He saved my life knowing it would cost him his own," she said. "He taught me that true immortality isn't living forever. It's living in a way that makes you worth remembering." As the ceremony ended, the Vorthak and humans stood together in silence. They had learned something profound from each other, that death and life, endings and beginnings, grief and love were all part of the same great mystery. The war with the Helix swarm was not over, but something important had been won. The Vorthak had discovered what it meant to be truly alive, just in time to learn how to die with meaning. 2 weeks after the battle, Nexus Station was slowly returning to normal. Work crews repaired damaged sections while new ships arrived daily, bringing supplies and more people. But in the quiet corners of the station, something new was happening that had never been seen before in the galaxy. The Vorthak were learning how to remember. In what used to be Kethmore's quarters, Yeltar had created something special. She called it the memory chamber. The walls were covered with drawings, written stories, and small objects that reminded the Vorthak of their permanently dead friends. Jinwoo visited the chamber often. He found it peaceful and moving to see how the Vorthak honored their fallen. Today he found Yeltar adding a new drawing to the wall, a picture of Kethmore reaching out to save Mirai's escape pod. Yunbi taught me to draw, Yeltar explained when she saw Jinwoo watching. She said that art helps keep memories alive. I think she was right. It's beautiful, Jinwoo said, looking at all the artwork on the walls. Kethmore would be proud to see how much you've learned. Do you really think so? Yeltar asked. Sometimes I wonder if we're doing this correctly. We've never had to remember the dead before. There's no wrong way to remember someone you loved, Jinwoo assured her. Every culture does it differently, but the important thing is that you're doing it. In another part of the station, Taemin had arrived from Earth. He was a philosophy teacher who studied the meaning of life and death. When he heard about what the Vorthak had learned, he came to see it for himself. He found Minho in the embassy's quiet room, talking with a group of young Vorthak who had never experienced permanent death before. Death seems very frightening, one of them was saying. How do you humans find the courage to live when you know you will die? That's exactly the wrong way to think about it, Minho replied gently. We don't find courage despite knowing we'll die. We find courage because we know we'll die. When your time is limited, everything becomes more important. Taemin listened from the doorway, impressed by Minho's wisdom. Think about it this way, Minho continued. If you had forever to tell someone you loved them, you might never get around to saying it. But if you know your time together is limited, those words become urgent and precious. After the session, Taemin introduced himself to Minho. I'm a philosophy professor from Earth, he said. I study questions about life and death. What you've accomplished here is remarkable. We couldn't have done it without the Vorthak being ready to learn, Minho said. They're incredibly brave. Imagine having to completely change your understanding of existence after millions of years. That's what makes it so amazing, Taemin said. They've discovered that mortality isn't a limitation. It's what makes life meaningful. Meanwhile, across the station, something wonderful was happening. The Vorthak had begun teaching other species about their new understanding of death and memory. A group of crystalline beings called the Siltari had lost some of their people in the battle. Like the Vorthak, they lived for thousands of years and had never developed good ways to cope with permanent loss. Yeltar and other Vorthak were helping them create their own version of the memory echo ceremony. We learned from the humans that grief is not weakness, Yeltar explained to the Silthari elders. Grief is love with nowhere to go. The memory echo gives that love a place to live. In the station's school, something even more special was happening. Human children and young Vorthak were learning together. Isul, the young sensor operator, had volunteered to teach when she wasn't on duty. Today, a small Vorthak child asked her a difficult question. Teacher Isul, will I die like the adults do? Isul knelt down to be at the child's level. The young Vorthak was just learning to control the glow of their bones, and their flame eyes flickered with curiosity and worry. Someday, yes, Isul said honestly. All living beings die eventually. But that's not something to be afraid of. Why not? Asked a human child sitting nearby. Because death is what makes life special, Isul explained. Think about your favorite toy. Would it be as precious to you if you had 1,000,000 of them? Or is it special because you only have one? The children thought about this. Life is like that favorite toy, Isul continued. It's precious because we only get one. That's why we need to take care of it, enjoy it, and share it with people we love. The young Vorthak's flames grew brighter with understanding. So death makes life more valuable? Exactly, Isul said with a smile. Later that day, all the humans who had helped teach the Vorthak gathered for a special meeting. Nari had called them together to discuss something important. The Galactic Council has heard about what happened here, she announced. They want us to create a formal program to help other species deal with loss and mortality. That's wonderful, Somin said. There must be many species who struggle with these concepts. There are, Nari agreed. The Council has identified at least 12 species who either live extremely long lives or have some form of immortality. Most of them have never developed healthy ways to process permanent loss. Jinwoo felt excited by the possibility. We could help so many people learn to cope with grief and find meaning in mortality. But we need to be careful, Taemin warned. Each species will need different approaches. What worked for the Vorthak might not work for others. That's true, Yunbi added. But the basic principles are universal. The importance of memory, the value of ritual, the need to honor the dead while continuing to live. They spent hours discussing how to create this new program. They would call it the Grief Counseling Initiative, and it would send teams of humans to help other species develop healthy ways to deal with loss. But the most important development came that evening, when Yeltar made an announcement to the entire station. She stood in the main assembly hall, her skeletal form glowing with soft white light. Around her, hundreds of beings from dozens of different species listened carefully. "The Vorthak have decided to establish a new tradition," she said. "We will create memory keepers, Vorthak who specialize in preserving the stories of our permanently dead. But more than that, we will help other species learn what we have learned." She paused, her flame eyes looking out at the mixed crowd of humans, aliens, and her own people. "Before the humans came, we existed, but we did not live. We had forever, but nothing had meaning because nothing could be lost. Now we understand that mortality is not a curse, it is a gift. Death teaches us that every moment matters," she continued. "Every choice we make, every word we speak, every act of kindness or courage, these things have weight because our time is limited. So we want to share this gift with others. The Vorthak will become teachers of mortality, helping immortal and long-lived species understand the value of endings." The crowd applauded, but Yeltar wasn't finished. "Most importantly, we have learned the most precious human word of all, goodbye. This word that did not exist in our language is now the foundation of our new philosophy. Goodbye does not mean forgetting. Goodbye means carrying someone with you in a new way. Goodbye means honoring the past while stepping into the future." After the ceremony, Jinwoo found himself on the observation deck where he and Kethmore had talked just days before. Yeltar joined him there, floating silently beside him as they looked out at the stars. "Do you think Kethmore would be proud of what we've accomplished?" she asked. "I know he would," Jinwoo said. "He died to save a human life, and in doing so, he showed that he truly understood the lesson you've all learned." "What lesson is that?" "That a life well lived is not measured by how long it lasts, but by how much love and meaning you put into the time you have." Yeltar was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised Jinwoo. "I want to thank you not just for teaching us about death, but for teaching us about life. We thought we knew what it meant to exist, but we were just waiting. Now we know what it means to truly be alive." "What's the difference?" Jinwoo asked. "When you're just existing, you drift through time without purpose. But when you're truly alive, every moment has the potential for meaning. Every choice matters because you know your choices are limited." She turned her glowing skull to face him. "The humans gave us the greatest gift in the galaxy. Not immortality, but mortality. Not endless time, but precious time. Not the absence of death, but the presence of life." As they stood together watching the stars, Jinwoo realized that something beautiful had been created at Nexus Station. Humans and Vorthak had learned from each other in ways that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations. The Vorthak had learned to grieve, to remember, and to say goodbye. But more than that, they had learned to live with intention and love with urgency. And the humans had learned something too, that their own mortality, which they had sometimes seen as a weakness, was actually their greatest strength. It was what gave them the wisdom to help others, the courage to take risks, and the appreciation for every precious moment they were given. In the months that followed, the Grief Counseling Initiative would help dozens of species across the galaxy. The Vorthak memory keepers would become famous throughout the stars, and on Nexus Station, a small plaque would be placed in the observation deck where Jinwoo and Kethmore had their first conversation about death. It read simply, "In memory of Kethmore and all who learned that endings are not failures but completions."